If I can just add one hopeful note in answer. The problems that we have in developing countries are not impossible problems to resolve. There are solutions. The only question is we are not settling down into addressing those solutions. We can easily double the official development assistance. We had an agreement 40 years ago that 0.7%, which is 0.75% only, of the gross national product of developed countries would be put in a basket in the middle of the table and used for developmental purposes. We never got it. The total amount that was contributed was 1/3 of what was promised, only 0.24%. And the richest country in the world, which we shall not name out of politeness for the soil on which we stand, has contributed only 0.14%, or 1/4 or 1/5 of what was promised. So that is development assistance. We have FDI, or foreign direct investment. It's not moving into the poor countries. Most of FDI is moving from the rich countries to the rich countries. That is not helping us in any way. And finally, trade. Trade is one of the best ways of resolving the problems of poverty. But trade comes up against this major problem of subsidies, which is not a minor problem. Subsidies today are $1 billion a day, $380 billion a year. And they are completely distorting international trade and killing the poor countries. So we have to do something about subsidies. And if we go through these three actions, ODA, FDI, and subsidies, I think we would be on the way to resolving many of the problems of poverty in the world. So there is hope. All that we need is to have Madison on our side, show the leadership as they come into the public sector. Over to Tinek for questions. Two questions from Tinek.
How do you respond? My name is Yuvaz Anandli and I'm a sophomore global scholar, but how do you respond to the criticisms that have come from many quarters, even the Secretary General himself, that have criticized your commission for including many countries that sit on the commission that themselves are egregious violators of human rights? For example, Sudan was on the commission during part of the Darfur crisis.
Okay, that's first question. We'll take the second one also and answer them together.
The second question is, could you properly explain the current power sharing agreement between the opposition and the government in Kenya? And do you view it as a short-term fix or a long-term solution?
Start, sir.
Yeah. The first question first. Membership of the Human Rights Council. The Human Rights Council is a member state institution. And like in the General Assembly of the United Nations, there are procedures for voting or getting access to the membership. So once this is followed, you would have the membership that reflects the different groupings within the General Assembly of the United Nations. So there is not that much a non-government member can do about it. Rather, it's for the governments to come together with a proposal that could change the way to select members. But you should know that it is just not an opportunity or just an hazard that some members are there. They have applied to be members, they were supported by their groups, and then the Human Rights Council is constituted. But then it's also for the Human Rights Council members to be to look or to review the records of their peers. And I think there is a very important development going on in the Human Rights Council, which is the UPR. You may have heard of it, the Universal Periodic Review, which would allow the whole members of the Human Rights Council to be reviewed first. We believe that this is a very, very important step in looking at the records of member states. The different commission was accused of selectivity just because there is no such things like a peer review that would allow the Commission to look at the situation in the countries who are members of the Commission. Now it's possible with the Human Rights Council. So be it Sudan or any other member in the Human Rights Council, there is a need to review. And as I am talking, there are already 16 countries members of the Human Rights Council who will be reviewed this session. And in 3 years' time, most of the 48 or so members would be reviewed. So we would have in the open, in the public domain, the kind of violations taking place, at least in the context of the seven main covenants that these countries are parties to.
Kenya, short term?
Kenya, short term. Oh, Kenya, I was escaping this one. Mr. Kofi Annan is on the ground. And this agreement has been negotiated very patiently. He was there. And he would also follow up on the implementation. So we should hope, and it's good for Kenya, that the leadership would agree to share the power. And it has just been signed. Let's see how it would move, but we should only wish the best for the Kenyans, because what they have gone through in December is awful, and the agreement would probably open new possibilities for them.
If I may just add supplementary answers. Kenya, the real problem is partly power sharing, but mostly land use. Land use is unequally distributed in Kenya, and that is what has to be rectified. So it is hoped that the new power sharing government will address the problem of land access and land accessibility. On the first question, I would like to ask the question of the global scholar who posed the question: do you believe in democracy or not? If you believe in democracy, then you must accept the results of democracy. The result of democracy is that 192 countries in the General Assembly elect the members of the Human Rights Council. And they elect it by majority. And therefore it is not easy. And if countries whom you don't like manage to get in, it is because other countries like them. And therefore you cannot arrogate to yourself the right of dictatorship to say, I think majority is wrong. You cannot. Either you believe in democracy or you don't. And democracy turns up very odd results. It turns up very odd leaders in many countries, let's not name them. And so accept the results of democracy, because that is part of the game of democracy. Over to Madison for two questions from their side.
Hi, my name is Jackie Newman. I'm a freshman here majoring in political science. And I have a question about the economic development that you previously mentioned. Do you think that institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank, by giving out loans to developing countries, have aided their progress with such things as economic development and the right to food, or have they hindered them by putting them further into debt?
Let's take the second question also.
My name is Janae Stones. I'm a psychology major here at FDU, and my question has to deal with the Millennium Goals that the UN put out a couple of years ago, and I just would like you to comment on the progress being made with the goals that apply to human rights.
Yeah. What is the question about the MDGs?
The Millennium Goals? I just want the progress that's being made on those.
The progress on the MDGs.
Yeah.
Okay. You take the second one, I'll take the first one.
Okay.
On the economic development by the institutions, either the World Bank or the IMF, these are what are called Bretton Woods institutions. They are in a way a part of the expanded United Nations system, but not quite inside the United Nations, because both the fund and the bank were established before the United Nations was established. So they predate the UN. Now, the bank, which is the more important of the two with reference to your question, the bank is an institution. It calls itself the World Bank, but it's a very confused institution. totally confused.